Why is it that a modern software engineer pulling in like $200,000 a year can share the exact same financial anxiety and the exact same terrifyingly empty bank account as a chariot maker from 4,000 years ago?
Yeah, it's wild to think about.
It really is. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are traveling back to the blistering heat of the ancient Middle East, specifically to Babylon.
Right, the undisputed center of the world at this point in history.
Exactly. I mean, it's the wealthiest city on the face of the planet. You've got massive walls, sprawling markets, the scent of spices, and just unimaginable amounts of gold flowing through its streets.
Which makes the inciting incident of our source material so striking.
Yeah, because despite all that astronomical wealth around them, our story begins with a profoundly ordinary, painfully relatable moment of just pure frustration on a bridge.
Right, so we have these two childhood friends who happen to cross paths on this bridge. On one side, you have Banser.
The chariot maker.
Exactly. He is a chariot maker, and his body is basically a map of his labor. His hands are thick, they're completely calloused from manipulating wood and bronze all day. His back is permanently stooped from decades of grueling physical exertion.
He's the definition of a hard worker.
He really embodies the absolute definition of a hard worker. Yet, if you were to turn Bansir upside down and shake him, not a single copper coin would fall out.
Wow.
He is entirely destitute. And then walking toward him is Arkad.
And their backgrounds are identical, right?
Completely identical. They grew up in the exact same neighborhoods. They received the exact same education. They played in the same streets. When they entered the workforce, Arkad also started at the very bottom, doing tedious, back-breaking work.
Their current situations.
Are totally different. Today, Arkad is universally recognized as the richest man in Babylon. He's reputed to hold more gold than the king's own treasury.
I mean, the contrast is just jarring, and Bansir, seeing this, he finally just snaps.
You can't blame him.
You really can't. He looks at his friend's silken robes, and then looks down at his own calloused hands, and he asks the question that, honestly, anyone who has ever struggled with money desperately wants answered.
The ultimate question.
Yeah. He essentially asks, how did you get so rich while I am still so poor? We grew up in the same city. We did the same jobs. You aren't smarter than me, Arkad. You didn't work any harder than I did. What is your secret?
And that question shatters a very specific illusion that a lot of us still hold today.
Right.
Bansir has been operating under this assumption that the world is a strict meritocracy of physical effort. He fully believed that maximum physical labor would just naturally result in financial security.
Because that's what we're taught. Work hard, get money.
Exactly. But on that bridge, he is confronting the terrifying reality that hard work, purely on its own, is entirely insufficient for building wealth.
So that is the foundational premise we are unpacking today for you. We're going to decode Arkad's answer. Because the mechanics of money, amazingly, have not fundamentally changed in 4 millennia.
They really haven't. Wealth is not, and honestly never has been, strictly about the size of your income or the volume of your physical exertion.
Right. It's about something else entirely.
It is governed entirely by the psychology of your habits. Arkad's eventual answer to Bansir, what became known in this ancient city as the 7 cures for a lean purse, explains why massive generational wealth is built by some, while others who earn massive salaries remain perpetually broke.
So we need to look at how Arkad actually pulled this off, because he wasn't born into this wealth at all.
Not even a little bit.
When we first meet him in his own recounting of his youth, he is a scribe. And I mean, if chariot making sounds physically demanding, being a scribe in ancient Babylon sounds like a complete cognitive and physical nightmare.
Oh, it was awful. They didn't have paper.
Right. So Arkad was taking a stylus and carving legal texts, word by painstaking word, into wet clay tablets, and then those tablets would be baked in the sun.
It was incredibly slow, visually taxing, and physically exhausting work.
And just like Bansir, he was completely broke. Every single penny he earned, he spent just to survive. He was basically trapped on the ancient Babylonian hamster wheel.
Until he has this encounter with a man named Algamish.
Algamish, right.
Yeah, Algamish is a moneylender. He's a man of immense wealth, and he comes to Arkad for a commission. He needs something transcribed quickly.
And he sees this exhausted young scribe.
Right, and seeing him, Algamish asks a question that forces a complete psychological reset for Arkad. He asks him, are you building wealth, or are you just helping your master get rich?
Man, that is That's a heavy question.
It changes everything. Up until that specific moment, Arkad viewed his labor simply as a transaction for immediate survival.
Carve the clay, get the coin, buy the bread.
Exactly, it's purely biological. Algamish introduces this concept of capital accumulation. He is demanding that Arkad look beyond the immediate biological transaction and actually evaluate the long-term trajectory of his life's energy.
And he gives him the first core principle, right?
He does. Algamish gives him the first cure. Keep at least 1/10 of all you earn.
10%.
Right. The mandate is to extract a minimum of 10% from the economic machine before you do literally anything else.
So Arkad decides to try it. He's like, okay, I'll do this. The first month, he gets paid and he attempts to save that 10%.
And how does that go?
Terrible. By the end of the month, he looks in his purse and the money is completely gone. He just couldn't make ends meet on the remaining 90%.
Right, because of course he couldn't.
Yeah, so he dipped into the savings. He spent it on the shoemaker, the tailor, and the food vendor. And when he confesses this to Algamish, he fully expects to be reprimanded.
He thinks he's going to get yelled at for failing.
Exactly. Instead, Algamish delivers this brutal assessment. He says, "You are letting the shoemaker and the tailor be your masters. You are giving them authority over your life."
Which is such a deliberate and intense way to phrase it. By labeling the shoemaker and the tailor as masters, Algamish is framing consumerism as a form of voluntary subjugation.
Wow, voluntary subjugation.
Yeah. Arkad is operating under the illusion that he is a free man, simply because he isn't enslaved in a legal or physical sense.
Right, he can go where he wants.
But Algamish totally dismantles that illusion. If every hour of your labor is instantly transferred to someone else just to maintain your baseline existence, you are not actually free.
You've just decentralized your masters.
Exactly. You have decentralized your masters. Instead of one overseer with a whip, you work for the tailor, you work for the baker, you work for the landlord. Your life energy belongs to them.
Let's view this concept of decentralized masters through the lens of modern income taxes, because I think that makes it so real for people today. As a society, we automatically accept that the government is going to step in and take 20 or 30% of our paycheck before the money ever even hits our bank account.
Right, it's just gone. You never even see it.
It's gone. And we adjust our entire standard of living, our housing, our food budgets, everything entirely around the net amount.
We never complain that we can't survive without that 30%.
Exactly, because we never possessed it in the first place. We just accept the government's authority as a master. So my question is, why is it so psychologically excruciating to act as our own personal tax collector?
That's a really good question.
Why do we feel such immense friction when trying to mandate a 10% tax for our own future before we hand the rest over to the modern tailors and shoemakers?
Well, the friction comes from a psychological phenomenon that behavioral economists today call Parkinson's law of money.
Okay, what is that?
Well, Algamish basically diagnosed it 4,000 years earlier. He tells Arkad, your necessities grow to perfectly consume your income because you allow it.
Because you allow it.
Right. Human psychology is fundamentally wired for immediate gratification and social signaling. When your income increases, your brain doesn't naturally allocate the surplus to future abstract security.
No, it definitely doesn't.
It immediately identifies opportunities to upgrade your status environment. We upgrade our cars, our apartments, our wardrobes, and our dining habits the very second our income allows for it.
And we convince ourselves we need those things.
Exactly. We subconsciously reclassify these upgrades as absolute necessities. And because this process is gradual, like a slightly nicer coffee here, a slightly more expensive brand of shoes there, we don't even notice the boundaries of our lifestyle expanding.
We just wake up one day making twice as much money as we did 5 years ago. Yet we feel exactly as broke.
Because the necessities expanded to perfectly consume the new income.
So the intervention here, which the source material calls starting thy purse to fattening, is the forceful interruption of that lifestyle inflation. It's the conscious act of paying yourself first.
The math provided in the text makes this undeniable.
Yeah, let's break down the math. Let's say someone is earning 20,000 lira a month. If they apply this rule, they act as their own tax collector and immediately sequester 2,000 lira.
Right off the top.
Right. Over a year, that's 24,000 lira. In a decade, without a single cent of interest or investment growth, they are sitting on 240,000 lira.
It adds up so incredibly fast.
It does. But the real revelation for Arkad wasn't just the arithmetic. When he actually committed, when he took the 10%, hid it, and treated it as if it never existed, he discovered that living on 90% of his income was not a sacrifice.
He didn't starve
He didn't starve, he survived perfectly fine.
because he proved to himself that the gap between 90% and 100% of his income wasn't the difference between biological survival and death.
What was it then?
It was merely the margin of mindless consumption. Once the savings were automated and removed from his immediate grasp, his lifestyle just naturally contracted to fit the 90% with virtually zero loss in his actual lived quality of life.
Wow. So he realized the 10% he used to spend brought him no lasting utility.
It was just economic leakage.
Economic leakage? I love that term.
Yeah.
But I can hear people listening to this and just throwing their hands up.
Oh, absolutely.
They're saying, save 10%, fine. But how do I survive on less when I already feel like I am drowning? My rent is astronomical. Groceries are up. I literally do not have enough money at the end of the month to buy a coffee, let alone save 10%.
And that is such a valid, stressful reality for so many people.
It really is. And amazingly, thousands of years ago, one of Arcad's own students posed this exact dilemma to him. He asked, my needs exceed my income. How can I possibly save?
And Arcad's response draws a very hard line between genuine biological or structural requirements and manufactured desires.
He tells the student that people constantly confuse needs with wants.
Right. It is a fundamental law of human nature that human desires will perpetually exceed what we can afford. Always.
So what's the solution Arcad proposes?
He proposes a rigorous, unflinching audit. He demands his students write down every single expense on a clay tablet.
Which again, sounds tedious.
Very tedious. But the point is to force awareness. Then they must ruthlessly distinguish between a true necessity and a habit born of social pressure or convenience. The directive is to build a budget where you can live comfortably on 70 to 90% of your income. But every single expenditure must be a conscious, deliberate choice.
Okay, I have to push back on this framing just a bit.
Go for it.
Because to a modern ear, this sounds dangerously close to the condescending financial advice we hear all the time today.
Ah, the avocado toast argument.
Exactly. Is this just the ancient Babylonian version of telling millennials to stop buying avocado toast? Are we genuinely suggesting that the path to wealth is living a miserable monk-like existence, agonizing over every single penny just to hoard a little bit of gold in a jar?
Right.
Because if the mechanism for wealth is constant grinding deprivation, most people will just opt out of the game entirely. I mean, why even try if you have to be miserable?
That is the exact trap people fall into when they attempt to budget without philosophy. They swing from mindless extreme consumption to extreme punishing deprivation.
Which is exhausting.
Deprivation is psychologically unsustainable. The source material is very careful to avoid this, actually. Arcad explicitly tells his students to budget so they can live comfortably on that remaining portion.
Okay, comfortably is the key word there.
Yes. He is not demanding asceticism. The actual target of this audit is not the daily coffee or the avocado toast, provided those things genuinely bring you joy and you consciously allocate funds for them.
So what is the target?
The target is the autopilot spending.
The phantom costs that just drain the account without us even noticing?
Precisely. Think about modern subscription models. Netflix, Spotify, gym memberships you haven't used in 6 months.
Monthly software fees, routine takeout food, ordered simply because you didn't plan dinner.
Yes, none of these are actual needs. You will not perish without them. Yet they become so embedded in our monthly routines that our brains categorize them as fixed, unavoidable costs, exactly like rent or electricity.
So Arcad is demanding that you force these phantom costs back into the light of conscious choice.
Exactly. If you genuinely value a streaming service, keep it, but acknowledge it as a want that is being intentionally funded by your remaining income.
Right.
Misery in personal finance comes from feeling out of control.
Right.
Comfort and peace of mind come from knowing exactly where every coin is going and why it is going there.
It's the difference between driving the car and being locked in the trunk.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so let's say you've done the audit. You've slashed the autopilot spending. You are successfully taxing yourself, that 10%, and you now have a growing pile of capital. Just hoarding it doesn't build wealth, right?
No, it definitely doesn't.
Yeah.
Inflation degrades its purchasing power.
Yeah.
Or you eventually just succumb to the temptation to spend it.
You have to deploy that capital into the market. This moves us from defense to offense, specifically the directive to make thy gold multiply, which is the third cure.
Yes, Arcad transitions from hoarding capital to actively deploying it. He takes his savings from his tedious work as a scribe, and he finds a shield maker in the city.
Okay, a shield maker.
Right. And this shield maker needs bronze to fulfill his commercial orders, but he lacks the upfront liquidity to purchase the raw materials.
So Arkad steps in.
He does. He lends his saved gold to the shield maker to buy the bronze. When the shields are manufactured and sold at a premium, Arkad receives his original principal back, plus a negotiated share of the profits.
Arkad begins to view every single gold coin not as a medium of exchange to be spent, but as a slave or a worker.
It's a harsh, antiquated term for sure.
It is, yeah. But the underlying concept is exactly how the ultra-wealthy view money today. Every coin you save is an employee.
Exactly.
That employee can go out into the marketplace, work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without ever needing a coffee break or vacation, and bring back more coins.
And then those new coins are the children of the original workers, and they too can immediately be put to work.
This is the ancient foundational mechanics of compound interest. It's an agricultural model applied to finance. You plant seeds that grow into a harvest, which produces more seeds, which you replant to get an exponentially larger harvest.
The mathematics of compound interest dictate that a sum of money invested at a 10% return will double in roughly 7 to 8 years.
And then it doubles again.
Suddenly, the burden of income generation shifts from your physical labor to your capital's labor. You have an entire army of capital working on your behalf.
But, and this is a big but, this compounding engine is incredibly fragile.
Extremely fragile.
It only functions if the capital is preserved, which introduces the next vital directive: guard thy treasures from loss, the fourth cure. And the story used to illustrate this principle is just a masterclass in the psychology of risk.
It really is. So we are introduced to Rodan, a spear maker.
Right.
He's highly skilled, and one day he receives a massive life-changing reward of gold directly from the king.
A huge windfall.
A massive windfall. He has more liquidity than he's ever seen in his life, and almost instantly, his brother-in-law approaches him with a pitch.
Oh boy. The classic brother-in-law pitch.
Right. He tells Rodan he has this unbelievable opportunity to go into the rare gem smuggling and trading business. It's pitched as a high-profit venture with guaranteed massive returns, and he just needs Rodan to back him with the king's gold.
Rodan is hesitant, so he goes to Arkad for counsel.
And Arkad's response establishes the absolute non-negotiable rule of capital deployment. It's a rule that echoes perfectly with modern investing titans like Warren Buffett.
Whose first rule is never lose money.
Exactly. Arkad warns Rodan that high returns are inextricably mathematically linked to high risk. He instructs him never to invest in fields he does not intimately understand and never to deploy capital without consulting experts who have a proven track record in that specific domain.
And what does Rodan do?
He actually heeds the advice. He declines his brother-in-law's pitch.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, because Arkad's warning proved prophetic. The brother-in-law's gem scheme was an absolute disaster. Every single coin invested in it was wiped out.
I look at Rodan's dilemma with the brother-in-law and the gems, and I see the exact same mechanic playing out in group chats and direct messages today.
Oh, all the time.
It is the exact same psychological trigger as getting a DM about a guaranteed 50% return on a new crypto coin, or seeing a viral social media post screaming at you to buy a specific penny stock before a short squeeze.
It is the overwhelming lure of the shortcut.
But when I think about the math of compound interest, I also think about market realities. You know, you put your money in an index fund and the market drops 20% in a week because of some global event. Your army just got slaughtered. How does Arkad's advice hold up against systemic market risk?
Well, it holds up because Arkad is separating speculative gambling from long-term capital allocation. When the market drops 20%, you haven't actually lost the soldiers unless you panic and sell at the bottom.
Right, you still own the underlying assets.
Exactly, the shares in the companies. The valuation fluctuates, but the productive capacity of the asset remains. The gem scheme, or the modern crypto rug pull, represents a total loss of capital. It goes to absolute zero.
Because the brother-in-law was operating in a domain where he had zero expertise.
Relying on asymmetric information, it preys on the psychological trap of new wealth. When individuals experience a windfall, a bonus, an inheritance, or even just accumulating real savings for the first time, they experience this potent mix of cognitive dissonance and FOMO.
The fear of missing out.
Right. They feel immense pressure to do something with the money immediately to maximize it. This urgency makes them incredibly vulnerable to charlatans offering absurd yields.
Real sustainable growth takes decades. Total unrecoverable loss happens in a millisecond. If someone is pitching a return that defies the standard market rate, they're either lying to you or they're asking you to absorb a level of catastrophic risk that could wipe you out completely.
You have to guard your treasure.
But securing the capital and putting it to work safely is only half the infrastructure of wealth. The other half is the physical infrastructure of your life, where your body lives and how it ages. Which brings us to the fifth and sixth cures.
Right. Arkad brings up a principle regarding your dwelling. Make your home an investment.
He suggests to the citizens of Babylon that they should strive to own their own homes rather than renting.
The logic is that rent is a sunk cost. It's capital that leaves your purse, pays for 30 days of shelter, and just evaporates forever.
Gone.
Gone. If you take that same monthly cash flow and direct it toward a property you own, you are living inside your investment. It acts as a forced savings mechanism and holds value.
It converts a purely consumptive expense into an equity-building mechanism. Instead of amortizing the landlord's debt, you are amortizing your own, slowly capturing the value of the underlying real estate.
That's the traditional view, yes.
But I have to challenge Arkad on this, and honestly, even the source text acknowledges the modern contention with this rule. In our current macroeconomic environment, buying a house is absolutely not always the mathematically superior choice.
It's definitely not as black and white today.
Not at all. Look at 7% mortgage rates. Look at property taxes, insurance premiums, maintenance costs, and just the sheer insurmountable barrier to entry for a down payment in major global cities. Often, mathematically, renting a cheaper apartment and aggressively investing the difference in an index fund yields a substantially higher net worth over 30 years. Is the directive to buy a home fundamentally outdated?
If you interpret the rule rigidly as an absolute mandate to purchase single-family real estate, regardless of market conditions, then yes, it can be deeply flawed advice.
Okay.
However, the broader philosophical principle Arkad is communicating remains entirely valid. He is teaching the philosophy of cash flow. Are your major recurring life expenses structured to purely consume your wealth, or are they structured to eventually build equity and enrich you?
Rent is pure consumption.
Exactly. Homeownership is a hybrid of consumptive expense like interest, taxes, maintenance, and forced savings. If you choose to rent because the market conditions dictate it's cheaper, Arkad's underlying principle demands that you must deliberately capture the financial advantage of renting and deploy that surplus capital into other appreciating assets.
So if you rent for flexibility and lower monthly costs, but you spend the surplus on lifestyle inflation, you violate the principle.
You completely violate it. The goal is to minimize the percentage of your income that burns as sunk costs and maximize the percentage converted into ownership of productive assets.
It's the mental shift from being a pure consumer to being an owner, regardless of the specific asset class.
Perfectly said.
And this leads directly into his next harsh reality check, the sixth cure: ensure a future income. Arkad looks at the young, energetic laborers of Babylon and forces them to confront human biology.
It's a tough conversation.
Very tough. He tells them there will come a day when your back aches like Banseer's, when your eyesight fails, when your physical capacity to trade labor for capital simply evaporates.
In antiquity, without a state-sponsored social safety net, this decline was a matter of literal life or death. If you could no longer work and possess no accumulated capital, you starved.
Today, we rely on pensions and government retirement accounts. But the fundamental necessity of planning for human capital depreciation remains absolute. You must build an income stream that is entirely divorced from your physical labor.
And his advice is to start young with small, consistent allocations.
When we look at the math of compound interest, why is the variable of time so much more critical than the amount of capital injected? Why can't someone just, live it up in their 20s and 30s and then aggressively save 50% of a high salary when they hit 50?
Because of the exponential nature of the compounding curve. In the formula for compound interest, time is the exponent.
It's the exponent, not just a multiplier.
Right. It is a vastly superior lever to the principal amount. If you begin investing a trivial amount in your 20s, that capital has 40 years to double and double again and double again. The growth curve goes almost vertical in the later decades.
But if you wait
until you are 50, even if you inject massive amounts of raw capital, you only have 10 or 15 years of compounding. The curve never achieves that vertical trajectory. Mathematically, small amounts invested early utterly decimate massive amounts invested late.
Time is the one asset you cannot retroactively acquire. You can only utilize it by acting immediately.
Exactly.
But, this entire framework assumes you have a surplus to begin with. It assumes you get a paycheck, you take your 10%, and you audit the rest. What if your baseline income is so low that you literally cannot survive on 90% no matter how much you cut? Or, far more terrifying, what if your net worth is deeply negative? What if you are buried alive under high-interest debt?
Arcad addresses both of these scenarios because they represent the most difficult psychological hurdles to wealth building. For the issue of low income, he introduces the seventh cure: increase your earning power.
Right, and the text details a young man who comes to Arcad, highly frustrated. He wants a raise.
He feels entitled to more money from his employer simply because he needs it.
But when Arcad interrogates him, it is revealed that this young man refuses to learn any new skills. He is executing the bare minimum requirements of his role and demanding a premium reward.
And Arcad shuts him down completely.
Completely. He tells him that to earn more gold, you must physically become more valuable to the marketplace. You have to invest in yourself. You have to acquire new skills, seek out new experiences, and network with individuals who operate at a higher level than you do.
He is explaining the concept of human capital. The market does not compensate you based on your needs. It compensates you based on the difficulty of replacing you.
That's a hard truth.
It is, but it's essential. If your current skill set is common and easily replaceable, your wages will mathematically reflect that abundance. If you aggressively acquire rare, highly demanded skills, you force the market to compensate you at a premium.
Saving 10% of a minuscule income is the necessary behavioral foundation, but scaling that income upward, while ruthlessly maintaining the 10% discipline to avoid lifestyle inflation, is the mechanism for explosive wealth generation.
But what if scaling your income isn't enough to outrun the mistakes of your past?
Yeah, that brings us to the story of Davasir. And honestly, this is the most intense, emotionally raw narrative in the text.
It's harrowing.
Davasir completely lost control. He fell into massive debt due to reckless, uncontrolled spending. He desired a lifestyle he couldn't afford, and he borrowed heavily to simulate it. The weight of the debt and the shame of facing his creditors became so unbearable that he fled Babylon in utter disgrace.
He surrendered his sovereignty completely to his creditors. In fleeing, he attempted to outrun the mathematical reality of his choices, which only accelerated his destruction.
And what happens to him while he's on the run?
Through a series of tragic events, Davasir actually ends up being sold into literal slavery.
He hits the absolute nadir of human existence.
He is stripped of his freedom, his dignity, and his agency.
It is the ultimate manifestation of financial ruin. In the ancient world, if you couldn't pay your debts, your physical body became the property of your creditors. We don't have debtors, prisons, or literal slavery today, thankfully. But the psychological suffocation of massive high-interest debt operates on very similar emotional mechanics.
It really does. It restricts your geographic choices, dictates your waking hours, destroys your sleep, and just dominates your entirely mental landscape. You are not free.
Eventually, Davasir manages to escape slavery and returns to Babylon. He is determined to reclaim his life, but the debts haven't vanished. They are waiting for him.
So he seeks out a mentor who gives him a mathematical formula for redemption.
The mentor tells Davasir, "You will take all your future income. You will immediately save 10% and never, under any circumstances, touch it. You will force your lifestyle to fit within 70%, and you will take the remaining 20% and divide it proportionally among all your angry creditors."
It is a radical, aggressive restructuring of his financial and psychological hierarchy.
I stop and marvel at the sheer terrifying courage this plan requires. Imagine the visceral shame and fear of being Davasir. You owe a fortune to people who are furious with you. They want their money immediately. And you have to walk up to them, look them in the eye, and say, "I acknowledge the debt, but I only have a slice of 20% of my income for you today because I am keeping 10% for myself."
It sounds impossible.
How does a human being overcome the instinct to cower and actually execute a confrontation like that?
It requires a profound psychological metamorphosis. If Davasir had simply taken the 30% surplus and given all of it to his creditors, he would still be operating under the internal mindset of a slave.
He would be subconsciously declaring, "My past mistakes dictate my entire present reality. I have no right to a future until my past is completely erased."
Exactly. By demanding that Davasir sequester the 10% first, the mentor forced him to prioritize his future self over his past failures.
He is paying himself before he pays his penance. He is declaring his own value before satisfying his masters.
And while the creditors are predictably furious at first, demanding full payment, Debussier's unyielding consistency slowly changes the dynamic. He consistently delivers that 20% week after week. The debt steadily shrinks.
But more importantly, the entire time he is paying down his past, he is secretly, steadily building his future with that untouchable 10%.
By the time his debts are fully cleared, he doesn't just cross the finish line at zero. He crosses the finish line with a massive war chest of capital.
He transformed his identity. He went from, I am a slave to my past, to, I am an active builder of my future. Even in the absolute depths of debt, he claimed sovereignty over a fraction of his own labor. It proves that debt is a mathematical problem that can be solved with relentless behavioral discipline.
Debt is not a permanent state of being, provided you do not allow it to dictate your psychological state.
As we synthesize these ancient mechanics, I want to look at a philosophical debate that takes place among the men of Babylon at the end of the text. They are debating a concept we still obsess over today. Who does the goddess of luck favor?
Right. Why do some people just seem to get all the lucky breaks, the perfect investments, the right introductions?
And they strip away the mysticism entirely, don't they?
They do. They conclude that luck is not a random lottery ticket falling from the sky. Luck favors those who take action.
Opportunities, market shifts, and lucky breaks pass by everyone every single day. But they are entirely fleeting. Only the individuals who are actively moving, who possess capital because they saved it, and who have the courage to reach out and grab those opportunities actually capture the benefit.
Procrastination is the enemy of luck. If you are waiting for the perfect market conditions to start investing, or the perfect raise to start saving, or the perfect emotional state to confront your debts, opportunity will simply walk past you to someone who is already in motion.
So, what is the ultimate conclusion you need to take away from these clay tablets? Wealth is not about a massive income. You can earn a fortune and still be entirely broke if your decentralized masters are taking it all.
Wealth is about small, relentless, incredibly boring habits.
It's about starting exactly where you are today. Save a tenth of your income. Treat it like a non-negotiable tax. Audit your desires and spend the rest consciously. Put your capital to work safely. Avoid the lure of the shortcut. And just watch where that single habit takes you over a decade.
We constantly frame wealth purely in terms of mathematics, numbers on a screen, compound annual growth rates, real estate portfolios. But if you think back to Bansir's exhausted, calloused hands on that bridge, and you think about Davasir's harrowing escape from literal slavery, perhaps the true wealth built by these principles isn't about gold or fiat currency at all.
What is it about then?
It is about sovereignty. It is about agency. If you do not control your money, and by extension your creditors, algorithms selling you dopamine hits, the modern tailors and the landlords, will absolutely control you. They will dictate where you live, what you eat, how hard you work, and when you are permitted to rest.
That is a terrifying thought.
But there is a way out. The 10% you extract from the economic machine isn't just a financial buffer. It is a literal down payment on your own freedom. What would your life look like if you finally stopped working for the masters of your spending habits and starting today, began working entirely for yourself?